Natasha O'Connell never imagined that a single act of kindness would unravel such a complicated web of secrets. Working the late-night shift at the Harborview Diner, she was used to serving coffee to exhausted truck drivers, giving to-go boxes to hurried nurses, and offering a warm smile to weary souls passing through. But when a shivering homeless man staggered in one stormy evening, Natasha did more than place a hot meal before him. She offered a helping hand, unaware that this gesture would set in motion a remarkable chain of events. Little did she know that behind his ragged coat lay a past that would redefine everything she believed about second chances. It was close to midnight when the homeless man first limped into the Harborview Diner. Rain hammered against the glass windows, and the wind outside roared in fierce gusts, rattling the door each time a customer came or went. Natasha, 26 years old and barely paying off her student loans, was doing her best to stay awake on this dreary shift. Most of her co-workers had clocked out, leaving her to handle the last stragglers alone. She was in the process of wiping down the counter when she noticed him, half-drenched hair plastered to his forehead, face sunken from hunger, and hands shaking as he struggled to close the door behind him. His eyes flickered with desperation, an animal's glance, more cautious than hopeful. Natasha's heart sank. In her hometown of Cedarfield, acts of charity were not uncommon, but she had rarely seen anyone quite as ghostly. She recalled her mother's teachings that you never judge a person by the weight of their wallet. Turning off the faucet, she stepped away from the sink and approached him gently, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sir," she said softly, "would you like a cup of coffee to warm up?" He looked at her, as if testing whether the offer was genuine. "That'd be nice," he muttered, voice scratchy, as though he hadn't spoken in days. "Have a seat anywhere," Natasha said, gesturing to one of the booths. She didn't expect a tip. He looked like he could barely tip himself into a chair. Still, she grabbed a mug from under the counter, filled it with steaming coffee, and placed it in front of him. While he warmed his hands around the cup, she asked, "Anything else I can get you?" "I don't have," he began, voice trailing off with embarrassment. "Don't worry," she cut in gently. "It's on the house. You're welcome here." His dark eyes flickered with gratitude and something else, shame perhaps. "Thank you," he whispered. In that moment, he was simply a battered soul seeking shelter from the night's fury. Natasha felt an inexplicable pull, a compassion beyond her usual sense of duty. Without a second thought, she whisked away to the kitchen and prepared a basic but hearty meal: scrambled eggs, buttered toast, and a small cup of soup. When she placed the plate before him, he stared at it with a kind of wide-eyed disbelief. Then, wordlessly, he devoured every bite. It was late. The diner's lights were dim. In between checking on the other tables, Natasha returned to this stranger, noticing how he fought to keep from dozing off. "Do you have somewhere to go tonight?" she asked. He offered a faint shake of his head. "I'll figure something out," he said, trying to sound casual. Natasha hesitated. She knew that the local shelter was a couple miles away, almost impossible to reach on foot in this weather. And the night was only getting colder. Not for the first time, she wished she had the resources to house everyone who needed it, unable to shake the feeling that sending him back onto the streets could be disastrous. She decided on something that surprised even herself, to offer him safe harbor for the night, at least in the diner's storage area, where the manager occasionally let her rest between shifts. "I'll ask my boss if it's okay for you to stay until morning," she said. "We'll figure out a better plan tomorrow." He stared at her, mouth partially agape, struggling to believe that a complete stranger would extend such kindness. You don't even know my name," he said. Natasha smiled. "Well, we've got time to fix that, don't we?" His name, he claimed, was Garrett Weaver. That night, as the diner fell quiet and the remaining customers trickled out, Natasha brought him a blanket from the staff break area. She told her manager that he needed a safe place, and though her manager was initially hesitant, he nodded in agreement. The weather was brutal after all. After locking up, Natasha found Garrett huddled under the blanket. The overhead light flickered, casting shadows across his gaunt cheeks. "This okay for you?" she asked, her tone gentle but concerned. He nodded. "Better than anywhere else I've been in months." A pang of sympathy washed over her. She took a seat on a metal stool across from him, maintaining a respectful distance. As silence settled, she realized her curiosity was gnawing at her. She had known plenty of homeless people who sought warmth at the diner, but something about him felt different, like a statue that had toppled off a marble pedestal. "Where are you from, Garrett?" she asked, pulling her sweater tighter around her shoulders. He hesitated, swallowing the bitterness of memory. "I used to live in the city," he said, eyes drifting to the floor as if searching for words among the dust. "Ha," Natasha said. "Which part?" He cleared his throat. "Greenwood Heights." The name jolted Natasha's memory. Greenwood Heights was an affluent neighborhood. Mansions, neatly trimmed lawns, private security gates, definitely not the sort of place one left to end up homeless. She tried not to show her surprise. "Oh, it's nice there," she ventured. Garrett gave a dry, humorless chuckle. "It was. Not for me. Not anymore." Something in the way he spoke, like he was choking back the bitterness of regret, kept her from prying further. Instead, she set her hand gently on his. "It's okay. You don't have to tell me everything now. Get some rest. Tomorrow's another day." He nodded, and she stood to go. Before she turned off the light, he whispered, "Thank you." She paused. "You're welcome." Then she flipped the switch, leaving him in darkness. Morning arrived with clearer skies, though the wind still rattled the diner's windows. Natasha, finishing her early shift, found Garrett sitting at a corner booth. He looked marginally better, hair still messy, cheeks still hollow, but there was a faint sense of renewed dignity. She slipped into the seat across from him, sliding over a mug of fresh coffee. "I asked my friend Mariam, who works with a local non-profit, if she might help," Natasha said, stirring her own coffee. "She can probably hook you up with temporary housing at least." He looked overwhelmed, as if the idea of stable shelter was both exhilarating and terrifying. "I appreciate that." She studied him. "Any family you could contact?" His face darkened again, and he shook his head. "No, not really." A question lingered on her tongue. "How did you end up like this?" She didn't ask, but it pressed in her mind. Eventually, Garrett spoke on his own. "I suppose I should come clean about my situation." Natasha leaned forward, curiosity piqued. Garrett exhaled slowly. "Until about a year ago, I was working for a big financial firm. I had money, not just money, stupid money." He drummed his fingers on the table, the coffee untouched. "But I got involved in some shady investments, trusting the wrong people. Then the scandal broke. I lost my entire fortune. There were lawsuits. My business partners vanished. My family disowned me. My friends didn't want the bad press. I became something of a pariah." Natasha's eyes widened. She had seen news stories about disgraced financiers, men in tailored suits shuffling to court appearances, but never one who ended up in her diner, homeless and alone. I'm so sorry," she said softly. He huffed a humorless laugh. "Don't be. I made my bed, and now I'm lying in it, except I don't even have a bed." Though his tone was sardonic, she sensed deep pain. She realized that in his eyes, she probably represented a person he never thought he'd become dependent on a waitress, someone he might have barely noticed in his previous life of wealth. Yet here she was, the only person offering him a hand. Natasha felt her sense of compassion and curiosity deepen. "If you had the chance, would you try to fix your old life, or would you start fresh?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment, as though seeing in her a reflection of humanity he had once taken for granted. "I don't know," he admitted quietly. "I'm not even sure if there's anything left to fix. Over the next few days, Natasha and Garrett forged a fragile sort of friendship. Mariam, the non-profit worker, managed to get Garrett a temporary bed in a shared living space. But funding was tight, and the waiting list was long. In the meantime, Garrett spent his days searching for work, any work, but found that his tarnished reputation followed him like a curse. No one wanted a disgraced ex-millionaire with scandal attached to his name, even for simple manual labor jobs. Feeling both pity and responsibility, Natasha tried to help. She made calls, asked around, and handed out Garrett's patched-together resume to local businesses. But the rejections piled up. Late at night, over leftover diner coffee, he confessed how each no chipped away at his hope. One evening, he walked into the diner, looking unusually pale. Natasha rushed to check on him. "Are you He swayed slightly. I haven't eaten since last night. My housing arrangement fell through too. The place is over capacity." Natasha's heart clenched. She grabbed him by the arm and sat him down in a booth, ordering him a bowl of chicken noodle soup. As he ate ravenously, she quietly told her co-worker she'd cover the cost. "I appreciate this," he mumbled between spoonfuls. She forced a small smile. "I know you'd do the same for me if our positions were reversed." "Would I have?" he asked bitterly. The question hung in the air, echoing with regret about the person he once was. Natasha changed the subject. "Let's figure out a more permanent solution." He set the spoon down, exhaling heavily. "I don't even know if I deserve it. Not after everything that's happened." "Don't say that," Natasha insisted. "Everyone deserves a second chance." But the deeper she got into Garrett's situation, the more complicated it became. Old news articles labeled him a crook, a fraud, despite never having been formally charged for any crime. Rumors swirled that he'd destroyed people's savings accounts, that he'd orchestrated a Ponzi scheme. Garrett denied orchestrating any fraud, insisting he'd been a scapegoat, a minor partner who got left holding the bag. Whether or not that was the entire truth, Natasha didn't know. But she believed in redemption. She believed that a broken life could be restored, even if the path was rocky. In the days that followed, Natasha convinced her landlord, Miss S. Kim, to let Garrett rent a tiny, spare basement room at a steep discount, explaining his circumstances and vouching for his good character. Miss S. Kim was reluctant at first, but relented after meeting Garrett and sensing his genuine remorse for past mistakes. With a modest roof over his head, barely large enough to fit a cot, and a small table, Garrett could finally sleep without fear of the rain or the cold. He visited the diner daily, finding comfort in Natasha's supportive presence. He even started assisting with small tasks around the diner, cleaning tables, washing dishes, anything to keep his mind busy. One afternoon, while Natasha was off duty, Garrett stumbled upon a job notice posted on a community board at the local library. A local shipping warehouse was hiring general laborers. No background checks necessary. Without much hope, he filled out the application and was surprised when, 2 days later, he received a call to come in for an interview. The morning of the interview, Garrett arrived early, determined to seize what could be his last chance. The warehouse manager, a burly man named Trevor Malone, glanced at Garrett's resume and frowned. "Says here, you used to be a financial advisor." "Yes, sir." Trevor raised an eyebrow. "And now you want to lift boxes for $10 an hour?" Garrett pressed his lips together. "I'm just trying to rebuild my life." Something flickered across Trevor's face, perhaps empathy. "I can give you a trial shift," he said. "Show up tomorrow morning at 6. If you work hard and don't cause any trouble, we'll see." Garrett thanked him profusely, hiding the tremor of relief coursing through his body. That evening, he practically sprinted to the diner with the news. Natasha was on her break, sipping water at a booth, eyes lighting up when she saw him. "You look excited," she teased. "I got a job," he blurted. "Starting tomorrow, if all goes well." Natasha beamed. "Garrett, that's great. I'm so happy for you." For the first time, she saw a genuine smile spread across his weary face. "I really couldn't have done this without you, Natasha." The gratitude in his voice was thick, and the two shared a moment of silent understanding. Garrett's first week at the warehouse was grueling. His body, accustomed to suits and boardrooms, struggled with the physical labor. He came home each night to the cramped basement room with aching muscles and raw palms. But he pushed through. Every time he felt like quitting, he thought of Natasha's kindness. Quitting would cheapen the faith she had in him, so he pressed on. But the tension at the warehouse was palpable. Some of the other workers whispered about him behind his back, apparently recognizing him from sensational news stories. Rumors circulated that he was a criminal, that he belonged in jail, not a warehouse. One evening, he returned to his locker, only to find "thief" scrawled in black marker across the metal door. He tried to keep it together, but the ghosts of his past weighed heavily. After his shift, he staggered into the diner, looking more exhausted than ever. Natasha, concerned, pulled him aside. "What happened?" she asked, reading the shame in his eyes. He hesitated, not wanting to appear weak. But eventually, he broke down and told her about the locker graffiti and the glares he received. "Maybe this is all I deserve," he muttered, voice trembling. Natasha frowned. "Garrett, no. You're working hard. Don't let these people get inside your head." He chuckled sadly. "Easier said than done." "Look," she said, "I've met plenty of people in my life, some good, some bad. You are trying to make amends. That matters." Her reassurance was a balm to his bruised spirit. "Thanks, Tasha," he said, using a nickname he'd adopted for her, a sign that their bond had grown more personal. Just as she was about to respond, the diner's door swung open, letting in a burst of cold air. Stepping through was a man in a tailored suit, his hair perfectly styled, his expression self-important. Natasha's eyes flickered to the new customer, but Garrett froze. Recognition sparked in his gaze. The well-dressed man scanned the diner, and when his eyes landed on Garrett, a mixture of shock and satisfaction rippled across his features. He approached, each step echoing on the tiled floor. "Garrett Weaver," he said, voice dripping with disdain. "I never thought I'd see you here, scrubbing tables in some no-name joint." Garrett's face went pale. "Brandon," he muttered, posture stiffening. Natasha sensed the tension. She stood protectively close, ready to intervene if necessary. "So it's true. You really did crawl under a rock," Brandon sneered. "Did you think you could hide forever?" Garrett swallowed. "I'm not hiding. This is where my life is now." Brandon scoffed. "What a pity. I guess it's karma for what you did to all those investors." A flush of shame and anger colored Garrett's cheeks. Natasha could almost feel his pulse racing. "You were part of that firm too, Brandon. Don't act innocent." Brandon tossed his manicured hand dismissively. "I was cleared of all wrongdoing, no thanks to you." Then he turned to Natasha, wearing the kind of smug grin that set her teeth on edge. "You must be the good Samaritan who's been babysitting this clown." "I'm just a waitress," Natasha replied, trying to keep her voice steady but civil. "And Garrett's my friend." Brandon let out a disdainful laugh. "He was my friend too, until his stupidity cost us everything. You know, he owes people a lot of money, and those people haven't forgotten." The air crackled with confrontation. Natasha noticed Garrett's hands balled into fists at his sides, knuckles white. "You and I both know it was Ridgemont who orchestrated the fraud." Garrett spat. "You just let me take the fall." Brandon shrugged, an infuriating smirk still plastered on his face. "Someone had to, and you were conveniently available." Natasha stepped between them, glaring at Brandon. "All right, that's enough. If you're not here to eat, you need to leave." Brandon pulled out a business card and flicked it onto the counter. When you finally wise up and realize you're wasting your life, give me a call. Maybe we can find a way to get you out of this dump. However, I doubt there's much use for a pariah millionaire." With that final verbal jab, Brandon turned and strutted out of the diner. Garrett stood there, shuddering with the force of old, helpless fury. Natasha gently placed a hand on his shoulder, but it didn't ease the tension coiled in his muscles. The following days found Garrett spiraling into a quiet despair. Brandon's reappearance had reignited painful memories. The seeds of doubt sprouted, reminding Garrett just how precarious his new, fragile life was. Every scornful look at the warehouse, every memory of the scandal, and every pang of guilt over those who lost their investments weighed on him. Amid this emotional storm, an unexpected opportunity emerged. One afternoon, a man in his early 40s, with a friendly face and salt and pepper hair, arrived at the diner, asking for Garrett by name. Natasha hesitated, wondering if this was yet another old foe, but he introduced himself as Victor Wheeler, a journalist working on a follow-up story about the financial scandal that had ruined so many. "I'm trying to get the truth out," Victor explained, settling into a booth. "I believe Garrett was not the primary orchestrator. The paperwork from the lawsuits suggests that the main culprit was actually a man named David Ridgemont and his close associates." Natasha leaned forward, heart pounding. "So, you think you can prove Garrett's innocence?" Victor shrugged. "He's not entirely blameless. He signed off on suspicious documents, but he may have been pressured or misled. Publicly, though, he took the brunt of the blame. I want to write a piece that sets the record straight." Garrett, who had overheard from a few feet away, approached cautiously. "Why now? Why not a year ago?" Victor's gaze softened. "Because only recently have certain sealed files become accessible. And I've interviewed a few of your ex-colleagues who hinted that you were a scapegoat. I want to hear your side." A swirl of conflicting emotions clutched Garrett's heart: hope, fear, anger. He had long given up on clearing his name, yet the journalist's presence offered a sliver of redemption. Natasha touched his arm gently. "This could be your chance, Garrett," she said quietly, "to finally get closure." He swallowed hard and nodded. "Okay, let's talk." In the subsequent weeks, Victor interviewed Garrett extensively, poring over old contracts and corporate memos. Natasha assisted by organizing notes and offering emotional support whenever Garrett's memories became overwhelming. The entire process was nerve-wracking, yet it also provided Garrett with a strange sense of catharsis. But not everyone was happy about this new development. One evening, Garrett's phone buzzed with an unknown number. When he answered, a cold voice spoke. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." He stiffened, his pulse hammering. "Who is this?" The line went dead. Shaken, Garrett confided in Natasha, who urged him to be careful. They suspected that someone from Ridgemont's circle might be trying to silence him. After all, if Victor's story proved that Garrett had been set up, the real culprits could face renewed legal scrutiny. Still, Victor pushed on, determined to reveal the truth. He arranged for a meeting with a key whistleblower who claimed to have evidence that could clear Garrett's name entirely. The rendezvous was set for a motel on the outskirts of town, a secret location, away from prying eyes. Natasha, worried for Garrett's safety, insisted on driving him there. En route, they both sat in tense silence. Even though they tried to stay under the radar, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. Upon arriving, they met Victor in a grimy parking lot with flickering neon lights. Together, they knocked on the door of a shabby motel room. The whistleblower, a nervous-looking woman with short, cropped hair, peeked out. She let them in quickly, double-checking no one lurked outside. "I brought the files," she whispered, opening a battered suitcase. Inside were folders of documents, printouts, and flash drives. This should prove who orchestrated everything. Garrett and Victor scanned through some of the documents, eyes widening as they recognized signatures, hidden communications, and forged authorizations. The whistleblower had worked in Ridgemont's accounting department and had quietly squirreled away incriminating material for personal protection. A rush of relief and vindication washed over Garrett, though tinged with fear. "This is it," he murmured, voice trembling. "This proves I wasn't behind it all." Natasha squeezed his hand, her own heart pounding. "We can clear your name," she whispered. At that very moment, headlights suddenly illuminated the motel room's curtains. Tires screeched outside. Fear coursed through everyone. Had someone followed them after all? Victor peered through a gap in the curtains, heart hammering. In the dimly lit parking lot, a black SUV idled, its engine growling ominously. Two figures in dark suits stepped out, scanning the motel doors as though searching for someone. Ridgemont's men, Natasha whispered anxiously. Garrett inhaled sharply. "Possibly. We need to get out of here. They can't get their hands on these documents." The whistleblower, trembling, zipped the suitcase shut. They'd stop at nothing to keep this quiet. Victor nodded. "Let's slip out the back window." "My car's parked behind the building." They hurried into the small bathroom, where a narrow window led to an alley. Garrett climbed out first, then helped Natasha and the whistleblower. Victor maneuvered the suitcase through gingerly, trying not to make noise. Moments later, they crouched behind a dumpster, hearts pounding. In front of the motel, the dark-suited men pounded on doors, presumably looking for the whistleblower's room. Shouts echoed in the night. Taking advantage of the commotion, the group sprinted down the alley toward Victor's sedan. They piled in, adrenaline surging. Victor floored the gas pedal, tires squealing as they escaped into the night. Natasha kept glancing nervously in the rearview mirror, half expecting the black SUV to roar up behind them, guns blazing like in some crime thriller. But after a few tense minutes, no one followed. Chest heaving, Garrett sank back into the seat, clutching the whistleblower's suitcase. Natasha placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, though her own pulse remained skyrocketed. "That was close," she breathed. Victor's jaw clenched. "We have to get these documents somewhere safe. I'll make copies and give them to a contact at a reputable media outlet. Once they publish the story, it'll be too big to bury." Garrett exhaled, the weight of a year's worth of guilt and shame pressing against his ribs. "I never thought it would come to this. I was ready to just disappear, live out my life in obscurity." Natasha looked at him, her eyes teary but determined. "You deserve justice, Garrett. You deserve a chance to start over without this cloud following you." He swallowed, overwhelmed with emotion. "Thank you. And Victor, thank you. Both of you." Within a week, the whistleblower's evidence was analyzed, verified, and prepared for publication. Victor wrote a bombshell article, documenting how Ridgemont and his cronies had orchestrated the scheme, falsifying paperwork to pin the blame on Garrett once everything went south. Garrett's role was minor, more of a scapegoat than a conspirator. The piece hit a major online news outlet, going viral within hours. Outrage flooded social media, with renewed calls for criminal charges against Ridgemont and demands for Garrett's vindication. Slowly but surely, public sentiment shifted. Where once everyone viewed him as a villain, they now saw a victim of corporate betrayal. In Cedarfield, word spread quickly. Natasha saw it firsthand when a few warehouse colleagues who had mocked Garrett approached him to apologize. Even the manager, Trevor, patted him on the back. "You took a raw deal, Weaver," he said. "Hope this helps you get back on your feet." Garrett was stunned by the outpouring of sympathy. He had expected the story to just fade, or for people to remain skeptical. Yet, day after day, the diner received phone calls for him, former acquaintances, potential employers, and even well-wishers wanting to offer support. Finally, one evening, a city official visited the diner. He introduced himself as Daniel Rowe, a representative of the local small business committee. "Garrett," he said, "I read Victor Wheeler's article. The city's looking for someone who understands finance to consult on a new program to help small entrepreneurs avoid predatory loans. I realize you've had a rough go, but we believe you'd be an asset. Are you interested?" Garrett was speechless. He nodded slowly, eyes darting to Natasha. She flashed him a grin, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "That's amazing," she whispered. Daniel handed him a business card. "Let me know. I think we can help each other. Consider it a second chance." As the official left, Garrett sank into a booth and buried his head in his hands, this time not in despair, but in relief and profound gratitude. Natasha slid next to him, rubbing circles on his back. "You did it," she murmured. "You're free." He lifted his head, eyes brimming with tears. "No, we did it. I couldn't have done any of this without you." In the following weeks, Garrett formally accepted the consulting position. It paid moderately well, nothing like his old millionaire days, but it was honest work that helped the community. He moved out of the cramped basement and found a modest apartment close to the diner. He still came by daily, not just for the coffee, but to see Natasha, who had become a pillar in his life. Their relationship deepened. The trust, born from adversity, began to blossom into affection. One afternoon, after her shift, they walked along the waterfront, the sun dipping below the horizon in vibrant oranges and pinks. "You know," Garrett said softly, "I spent so long feeling sorry for myself, convinced I was beyond redemption. You taught me otherwise." Natasha slipped her arm through his. "I just did what felt right." "You did the rest yourself, Garrett." He smiled, the lines of stress on his face softer than they'd been in months. "I don't want to lose your friendship or whatever this is becoming." A playful grin teased her lips. "You're not losing me, Garrett." They strolled in comfortable silence, letting the fading sunlight dance across the rippling waters. For the first time in a long while, Garrett felt content, hopeful about the future instead of haunted by the past. Just when life seemed to settle into a hopeful new pattern, Brandon reappeared. He showed up at Garrett's modest apartment, unannounced, face etched with desperation. Garrett opened the door warily. "Brandon?" His former colleague's arrogance had been replaced with anxiety. "I'm in trouble," he blurted, stepping inside without invitation. Garrett set his jaw, crossing his arms defensively. "Why should I care?" "Because Ridgemont is trying to pin everything on me now," Brandon hissed, pacing the small living room. "He's throwing me under the bus, just like he did to you." Garrett felt a glimmer of satisfaction. If he was honest, but it was overshadowed by pity. He knew exactly how it felt to be scapegoated. "And what do you want from me?" Brandon swallowed. "I need your help. Connections, a letter, something. People see you as vindicated now. They'll believe you if you say I wasn't involved." Garrett's blood ran cold at the request. Memories of how Brandon humiliated him at the diner flashed through his mind. "You lied about me," Garrett growled. "You ruined me." Brandon ran a trembling hand through his hair. "I know, and I'm sorry. But you don't understand. Ridgemont can destroy my life." Garrett inhaled sharply. "Did you or did you not know about the fraud from the start?" Brandon stammered. I might have known about some of it, but I was following orders." Garrett shook his head. "You want me to lie for you? It's not lying," Brandon insisted. "I wasn't one of the masterminds. I might have known more than I admitted." Fury and compassion warred within Garrett. He recalled how easily Brandon sold him out. Yet he also recognized that Brandon was now in the same helpless position he had once been. "All I can offer," Garrett said finally, "is the truth. And the truth is that you were complicit, but maybe not to the extent Ridgemont is. You might have a chance if you come clean." Brandon's face fell. He realized Garrett wouldn't protect him with falsehoods. "I can't believe this." he muttered. "After everything we went through, you mean after you stabbed me in the back?" Garrett cut in, voice steady. "I'm not your enemy, Brandon, but I'm done lying. If you want my help, you have to do it the honest way." Brandon seethed, shoving his hands in his pockets. "Fine, I'll figure it out myself." Then he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Garrett stood there, hands trembling, until Natasha arrived a short while later. He told her everything, and she wrapped her arms around him in a comforting hug. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "No more lies." He nodded slowly. Despite the tension, he felt an unexpected peace. By refusing to cover up Brandon's complicity, Garrett solidified his commitment to honesty and redemption. In the months that followed, the city's investigation into Ridgemont's fraudulent empire intensified, spurred on by public demands for justice. Multiple arrests were made, including some of Ridgemont's closest associates. Brandon ultimately took a plea deal, admitting partial involvement. Meanwhile, Garrett kept his consulting job, using his financial expertise to protect small businesses from shady contracts. He became something of a local hero, a living testament to the possibility of redemption and the power of second chances. His personal life also flourished. Natasha, having saved up some money, started taking business courses at night, harboring a dream of opening her own cafe someday. Garrett supported her wholeheartedly, eager to help her chart a path he had once taken for granted. They spent countless evenings together, sometimes at the diner, sometimes strolling along the waterfront, other times simply in each other's arms, savoring the quiet moments that felt like a gift. Every so often, Garrett's old insecurities flared up, but Natasha's unwavering faith in him kept him grounded. At a small ceremony organized by the city council, Garrett received an official commendation for his contributions, a symbolic gesture that marked how far he had come from sleeping under a diner's roof on a stormy night. Natasha cheered loudly when his name was announced. As he accepted the certificate, he locked eyes with her, gratitude and love shining in his gaze. Later, they stood outside the venue under a gently twinkling sky. He slipped an arm around her waist, drawing her close. "You saved me," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. She shook her head, smiling. "No, Garrett, you saved yourself. I just gave you a little push in the right direction." He leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers. Sometimes a little push can mean the difference between drowning and swimming. They held on to each other, the chaos of the past year finally giving way to a hopeful horizon. And that, dear viewers, is the incredible story of how a waitress's simple act of compassion changed a homeless man's life, only to discover that the man was a disgraced millionaire seeking a second chance. From late-night meals at the diner to high-stakes confrontations with the powerful, Natasha and Garrett discovered the true meaning of redemption, loyalty, and the power of a helping hand. Their journey wasn't easy, marked by old betrayals, new threats, and a whirlwind of challenges, but it led them to a place of honesty, renewal, and, ultimately, love. If this story moved you, please take a moment to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life, inspired tales of hope, perseverance, and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, compassion can change lives in ways we never expect.